What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew coming at you guys with another live show of What's the Word, Dirty Bird. As I stated last week, I will be coming to you guys every Tuesday from now on, trying to give you guys some live content. Today, I want to talk about the NFL draft. I want to talk about free agency mainly, and we also do some Q&A as well. And if you guys want to jump in, I may drop the link as well for you guys to jump in and ask some questions and things of that nature. But you guys always, of course, can drop your questions also in the live feed here. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys for continuing to support the channel. If you guys haven't already liked this video, please like the video, please share, please subscribe if you're not subscribed. We are currently on the road to 3,000 subscribers and beyond. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys, man, for your continued support. But with that being said, I'm gonna jump right into the chat and say what's up to you guys, and then we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll jump into some free agency talk and some draft talk. So King Trey Wade, what's going on, man? I believe you're the first one in the chat, man. I appreciate you joining me. I hope all of you guys' week is going well so far. Andrew G, what's going on, man? I appreciate you joining as always. This is one of the members of my channel, so I appreciate your loyalty to my channel, man. Being a member. Smooth C, what's going on? 78, what's going on, man? I appreciate you joining. Ray Fitty, what's going on, bro? I appreciate you joining. I hope all is going well with you guys. And Dre Murphy, what's going on? He says, good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing and feeling on this chilly, cloudy, rainy Tuesday morning? We doing good, man. I appreciate you joining as always, Dre. Appreciate you guys always tuning in and continuing to share out my content. But we're gonna start this live show just off with free agency because we know we are just a few weeks away from free agency. We're getting closer and closer to March. I believe the end of this week will be March 1st. So we know free agency is going to open up in about 2 to 3 weeks. And with the NFL salary cap going up, jumping up to the way that it did, our Atlanta Falcons should have some money to blow and spend and hopefully bring in the right players in free agency that'll fit this Raheem Morris, to fit his vision, the players that he wants to bring in to fit his vision. But I do want to get you guys' thoughts on some players that you think the Falcons should go after. Personally, I'm going to start with the current guys that are free agents that were on our roster last year. And then I want you guys to drop in the chat as well your thoughts on some players that are free agents that the Falcons could possibly bring in free agency. But first, I'm going to start with our roster because as we know, Terry Fontenot in this front office consistently state, in free agency that you start with your guys that are within your building because what those guys' strengths and weaknesses are. And usually in free agency, first you're going to want to look to either restructure some of the players that we already currently have on the roster, or possibly, go in and re-sign some of the players that are currently on this roster before you look on the outside and bringing in players. And good news is Raheem Morris knows some of these guys that are on the roster still, guys that are due to be paid, like a AJ Terrell, like a Grady Jarrett that may get restructured, that's been here. So good news is he kind of has some familiarity with Raheem Morris, with some of the guys that are currently on the roster and are looking to get new contracts. But then there are a couple players like a Kyle Pitts, like the Drake London, some of these guys that are currently on the roster that he's not familiar with. So I want to get you guys' thoughts on that as well. And Belo's World, what's going on? He said, squad up. I appreciate you joining me, man. And Jonte Rozier, what's going on? I appreciate you joining. Big Ant, what's going on? He said, Juju on that beat, man. Good morning, man. I appreciate you joining. Y'all definitely go over to AFN, hit that like and subscribe button over there on the channel as well. And I appreciate you also with Big Ant for being a member of my channel as well. And Ray 50 says Terry and Ra had their combine press conference this morning. Yeah, I have to drop a video on that. I didn't get a chance to see it yet, but I'm gonna check it out later today, and then I'll give my thoughts in the video of what they said. Let's see here. April 2, Thomas, excuse me. He says, "What's up, Jew? What's going on? I appreciate you joining. I think this may be a new name. I don't know if I seen you in here, but I appreciate you joining. If you're new to the channel, definitely let us know. Hit that subscribe button for your boy and share out this content. But I think this may be a new name that I'm seeing here." And Dre Murphy says the next player that they need to resign is Calais after resigning Nate, the Beast Dog, the Monster Landman. Yeah, most definitely. So you guys give me your thoughts on players that you think we should bring back. The first player I'm gonna start with that I think is a very interesting player for the Atlanta Falcons as far as in free agency or whether we should bring him back or not is going to be Jeff Okudah. What do you guys feel about Jeff Okudah? Do you think Jeff Okudah should be brought back? Personally, I think that Jeff Okudah played pretty well when he came back from injury after being injured in training camp and during the preseason. So you guys give me your thoughts on Jeff Okudah. Do you think that he's a guy? He's one of the guys that's a free agent. I'm not too sure if Jeff Okudah, when I was looking at um, Spot Track, where they kind of show like what players are worth and what they should be making annually. It said like he should be making around 14 million, or that's something he could ask for annually. So I don't know if Jeff Okudah earned that type of money. I feel like the Falcons may be able to get Jeff Okudah maybe on a lesser deal. Maybe you can sign him to like a 2-year deal. But we know that Clark Phillips played really well at that second. As the season waned on, he played well, being that number 2 cornerback. But personally, I like Jeff Okudah a lot, but I don't know if they'll bring him back. He did struggle at times to me in certain situations, as far as when we were playing zone for whatever reason, like in cover 2, it seemed like he was losing his depth a lot of the times and players were able to get behind him. But one thing that I did like about Jeff Okudah was his physicality. He was one of those guys that would come up and make tackles. He's a very physical cornerback. And because I believe that AJ Terrell will eventually get re-signed and get that big contract, we're still looking for that number 2 guy. So what you guys feel about Jeff Okudah? Do y'all think Jeff Okudah should be one of those guys that should be brought back? Personally, I wouldn't mind bringing him back under the right circumstances. Of course, it won't be under that $14 million annual salary that they're speaking on. But I think if you can get him at a decent, maybe something around like $6 to $8 million a year, maybe a 2-year deal, 16 million. I could see something like that for Jeff Okudah, and I would be, interested in bringing him back because yes, you have Clark Phillips, but he can continue to develop, and Clark Phillips can also play in the slot. So what you guys feel about Jeff Okudah being brought back? But I do think that Clark Phillips did show me some things last year. But I think that Jeff Okudah, with his length of being 6'1", because he's only 25 years old, he has the youth, that benefit of being in his youth. And he also has the benefit of him being in, having long arms, being physical to be able to play on the outside against taller wide receivers. Because we did see last year, even though Clark Phillips played really well, Clark Phillips is a smaller corner, and that's the reason why usually corners like Clark Phillips, they normally play the slot position because of size. And because these wide receivers now are 6'3", 6'2", and Clark Phillips on a good day is probably 5'10" or 5'9". I'm not too sure. You know, I'm not too sure if you want to consistently put Clark Phillips out there on the outside instead of playing him kind of on the inside. But we have seen guys like Rondé Barber in the league play well. We have seen guys like Brent Grimes that were, really good athletes, meaning Brent Grimes was one of those guys that could really, had a lot of vertical, could jump out the gym. So he played really well on the outside, even though he was a smaller corner. But I do think that Jeff Okudah added some value. So I'm not too sure where you guys stand on that. Dre Murphy says, yes, sir. As long as Jeff Okudah ain't asking for too much, why not? Yeah, I definitely think that you got to have you basically got to have a depth. Just like I say, you have to have depth at on the defensive line. You have to have depth in the cornerback position because injuries are going to happen, and we know that a lot of teams are deploying 3 and 4 wide receivers. There's a lot of spread, like the college and the NFL, a lot of RPO, and a lot of spreading teams out and having multiple wide receivers and having these flex tight ends that are hybrids, guys that like Travis Kelce, guys like Kyle Pitts, guys who can run out the catch. So you got to have corners. You got to have guys that can cover because a lot of the times in the league nowadays, you're playing mainly a lot of nickel, a lot of defenses where you got to put a lot of cornerbacks on the field. You got to take some of these linebackers off the field unless they can cover. So I definitely think that Jeff Okudah should be a guy that the Falcons should definitely think about bringing back. The second guy that I thought that the Falcons, I want to know what you guys feel about him. I think that he's interesting as well to possibly bring back. That was on the roster last year is Bud Dupree. What do you guys feel about Bud Dupree? Do you think Bud Dupree could be one of those guys that the Falcons should bring back? Personally, I think he played well last year. He had 6 sacks for our team, and he was playing on a minimum deal last year. So I don't see why the Falcons wouldn't bring back Bud Dupree. He's from Georgia, from the area, and he's a guy that's not that long in the tooth. I believe he's no more than about 30 years old. So I definitely think that Bud Dupree should be another guy that could possibly be brought back if I'm the Atlanta Falcons. What do you guys feel about Bud Dupree? Do y'all think he should be brought back? I think he adds value as far as he could be a rotational pass rusher. Yes, you have guys like Arnold Ebiketie. Yes, you had last year. You had Calais Campbell if he decides to come back. You had Onyemata. You have Grady Jarrett coming back. But I believe in having a rotation of guys. So, what do you guys feel about Bud Dupree? Do you think we should bring him back, or would you rather just go out and get one of these top guys? Because I really feel like this is going to be a very, very interesting free agency period, because there's a lot of big name guys that are either on the trading block or guys that are free agents. Like you have guys like Daniil Hunter. He's the first guy that I'm looking at. If you're trying to go for the big, the big fish, if you're trying to go out there and get a household name, a guy that can consistently get you 10, sacks a season, double digit sacks, to me, he's one of the only guys on that list outside of him and Josh Allen for the Jaguars. To me, those are the two guys that are going to consistently give you double digit sacks on the year, get you 10 plus sacks a year. But if I'm the Atlanta Falcons, would you guys want to go after Daniil Hunter, or would you rather have sprinkle in a Bud Dupree, maybe draft a Dallas Turner, maybe draft Layatu Latu or something like that? Would you rather go high in the draft and get an edge, or would you prefer going after one of these top guys that are going to be in the free agency? Because we're going to have a lot of money from what it's looking like. It looks like the Falcons are going to have a decent amount of money where we can go out, and if we want to go out and get one of these big name pass rushers, you can do it. But I'm kind of leery on doing that depending on the guy you're getting. But I would be willing to spend the money on a Daniil Hunter. I don't know about guys like Brian Burns. I seen recently they're stating that Leonard Floyd could be a guy that the Falcons could possibly go after because he played for Raheem Morris with the LA Rams, and he's also played at the University of Georgia. Last year, he had about 10 and a half sacks. And I think that he would be a guy that really could fit in this 3-4 scheme as well. And because he's familiar with Raheem Morris, maybe you bring him in to be one of those guys. But I don't think that Leonard Floyd is going to demand like top dollar, like some of these guys are demanding, because Leonard Floyd is one of those guys that has kind of bounced around a little bit. He was drafted by the Bears. The Bears moved on from him. Then he was with the Rams. And then, last year he was with the Buffalo Bills, I believe. So he's been a guy that kind of has bounced around a little bit. But he did, I believe, win the Super Bowl with Raheem Morris with the Rams. But with that being said, I do want to go back into the chat really quick and say what's up to some of you guys that joined after I started here. So what's going on? Georgia boy, let's see here. I hope all is going well with you, bro. Jay Diaz, what's going on, man? I appreciate you joining me as well. Prince Kale 89, what's happening, man? I hope all is going well with you as well. And Ray 50 said, yes, I like Bud. Yeah, Bud Dupree played well last year. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I definitely think that Bud was one of those guys that actually, earned his keep, because he wasn't making a whole lot last year. He kind of was on a 1-year prove it deal. And to me, nowadays, it's not a lot of elite top tier pass rushers. So if you're looking at pass rushers, you're looking at a guy that's going to give you, on average, the average pass rusher in today's NFL is getting you like 6 to 8 sacks. So you got to keep that in mind when you talk about paying these guys big money, unless you're like an Aaron Donald, unless you're a TJ Watt or one of these top guys, which most of the time those guys don't hit the open market. The Nick Bosa's, those type of guys usually are re-signed by their own team. So I think the Falcons' best bet maybe just drafting a guy and hoping that he turns into one of those guys like a Dallas Turner. If the Falcons decide to go with a veteran quarterback, or if they decide that, you know, they want to draft a quarterback in the later rounds, then they may go after one of the top, you know, edge rushers, because usually that's where you're going to find that really, you know, cream of the crop type dude that develops into that cream of the crop type dude. Let's see here. And Prince Kell makes a great statement here. He says Bud could be good depth and mentorship. Most definitely. Yeah, both Bud and I think Calais Campbell, both of those guys played well. Like they led Calais Campbell led our team in sacks with 6.5, and Bud was right behind him with 6. So you got pretty much a gang of guys that got you, you know, we had 42 sacks on the season last year. So I think that was a good idea to try bringing in multiple guys instead of just relying on one guy. Ray 50 brings up Khalil Mack's name. I heard that Khalil Mack's on the trading block, possibly with the Chargers, because I believe they're over the cap because they have so many players that's making big top dollar. I wouldn't mind a Khalil Mack either, because he's a veteran guy that, you know, consistently usually gets you those type of numbers, you know, 10 sacks a season. At worst, he'll give you 8 sacks on the season, but he's a guy that consistently gets pressures. And he's also a guy that teams, when they are doing their game planning for the week, as far as the offensive game planning, his name is he's a guy that's public enemy number 1. He's the guy that you circling on the board in the film sessions. Like, don't let this guy wreck the game. So Khalil Mack is definitely another name that I think is up there. I would prefer Danielle Hunter over Khalil Mack, because I do think that Khalil Mack is a little bit older than Danielle Hunter. But as far as the injuries, I think Danielle Hunter has had more injuries than Khalil Mack. And hey, Miss Maggie, what's going on? She says, "What's up, Jew?" Y'all make sure y'all go over and, as I said, show AFN some love. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate you joining me. And like Miss Maggie said, hit that subscribe and hit that like button for your boy. As I mentioned, it helps the algorithm, helps get this in the YouTube universe. So y'all definitely hit that like, hit that subscribe button for your boy. And Dre Murphy says, personally, I'd rather have Bud Dupree. Danielle Hunter probably going to want the bag, bro. Yeah, he's going to want money. Danielle Hunter, you get what you pay for. Like, Danielle Hunter is going to want top dollar, but we got the money to do it depending on how we spend this money. It's really going to come down to Terry Fontenot and this front office doing a good job as far as how they're going to allot the money. But that's why I keep saying over and over again, as far as when you bring up the quarterback position, you know, we have to be smart with the money. You have to figure out, do you want to throw the bag at a Kirk Cousins, meaning giving him what he wants? I seen a video to him today on Twitter that he's back throwing the football. You know, he had that Achilles injury, but I do think he'll be a good fit with our Falcons, because last year, if we had a Kirk Cousins on this team, we probably are a playoff team. We win the division because he makes good decisions with the football. And over the last couple of years, the last 2 years with Arthur Smith, you had a bunch of games that came down to the wire. Like, you have a Kirk Cousins, you're not losing that Cardinals game. You're not losing that game against the Vikings, with them having their backup, with Kirk Cousins not playing against Josh Dobbs. So a lot of these close games that you're losing, if you bring in a veteran guy, Russell Wilson, you bring in Kirk Cousins, you're not losing those games 9 times out of 10, because they're going to make good decisions. Let's see here. And 3 Dirty, I appreciate you joining as well. What's going on, OG? And Jonte Rozier says Bud and Floyd would be great together. Yeah, I think those guys would be pretty good together. Both of those guys coming off the edge. I don't know if we need both of them, though. I probably would sign one of them. I think we'll have to pick between which one you want, because I think either way it goes, the Falcons are going to draft a edge. I don't know if it'll be in the first round because we might go with that quarterback or go with a wide receiver, but I definitely think that at some point you're going to take an edge. Personally, I would take an edge. If we don't go quarterback, I definitely would take either um, Dallas Turner. I would take Jarrett Verse out of Florida State and or Latu out of UCLA. Those are the top three guys as far as edge. Now I heard that Latu had some injury concerns, like they say he's had some neck injuries or something like that. So that could be a medical issue where they may decide to go with like a Dallas Turner. But from what Will Anderson states about Dallas Turner, and Will Anderson, you guys know, was I think the second overall pick by the Houston Texans last year. He won the rookie defensive player of the year. He says that Dallas Turner, when he came in, was the best pass rusher like on their team. That he came in and he was a lot better than he was as a young pup when he came in. Of course, Dallas Turner came in after Will Anderson, but Will Anderson said that Dallas Turner was one of those guys that was just as athletic as him, but had more pass rush moves at a younger age. So I definitely could see Dallas Turner turn into something special. And just watching him on film, he's one of those guys that's super athletic, super twitchy, and one of those guys that's really fast. I do think he's still kind of raw and he has to develop a little bit more. But I do think that he could be one of those guys. And I continue to say this, and I've stated this. You guys know here on my channel over and over and over again. You have to value the trenches. And when we say value, that means it got to be top priority at some point. So I really feel like with the Falcons going offense pretty much the last 3 years, when you drafting Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson, if you don't go quarterback, I think you have to draft the edge in the first round. I don't think you really have a choice. And let's see. And Liquors with Lenore. I appreciate you joining as well. He said, "What's up, peeps? I hope all is going well with you, man." And it said, if we are in win now mode, we would need a vet QB. I think starting rookie QB can set us back again. Who will be your main vet that we should get? It's out of two guys that are vets. I would go with first. I would go with Kirk Cousins. The second one would be Russell Wilson. One of those two guys. But I think that Kirk Cousins, to me, the reason I prefer Kirk Cousins over Russell Wilson is Kirk Cousins is one of those guys that'll get the ball out of his hands quick. He's like an on-time thrower. He's not one of those guys that's looking to improvise. And I think that that was some of the issue that Sean Payton had with Russell Wilson as their quarterback in Denver. Is like Russell Wilson is a guy that likes to improvise. He's best when he's rolling out of the pocket, throwing the ball down the field, kind of playing like backyard football, where some of these offensive coordinators want you to be on time with the ball. I mean, if it's a three-step drop, I want you to three-step drop, and get the ball out your hands when that back foot hit. And I think that that's kind of what Kirk Cousins is. He's like a poor man's Matthew Stafford. I think Matthew Stafford, of course, has more arm talent or is a better arm talent than Kirk Cousins. But I think that when they say a fast processor, if they keep saying they want a quick processor or a fast processor or elite processor, that's what Kirk Cousins is. He's one of those guys that understands how to go from 1 to 2 to 3 as far as reading what a defense is trying to do, knowing where his hot reads are, getting the ball out of his hands. And I really feel like if he were to come here to Atlanta, we always talk about a quarterback has to be that guy that's going to make everybody around them better. And I really feel like that's something that Kirk Cousins brings to the table, similar to when Matt Ryan was with our Falcons. And not comparing the two, because I believe that Matt Ryan was a better player than a Kirk Cousins, but I don't think that Kirk Cousins gets enough credit for. If you go look at the Vikings and some of the guys that they've had, you look at the stats that some of those guys have put up playing with Kirk Cousins, when Thielen was playing with the Vikings, when Diggs was playing with the Vikings, now that's with the Buffalo Bills. If you look at Justin Jefferson, he's breaking all of these crazy records and stuff like that as a young wide receiver in the NFL. And we got to look at Kirk Cousins is the guy that's throwing Justin Jefferson the football. So with him breaking all these records, Kirk Cousins has been one of those guys that's putting him in position to do that. So I think that Kirk Cousins is a lot better than a lot of people give him credit for. A lot of people look at, Kirk Cousins his, primetime games, and they say that his record is not good in primetime games and things of that nature. But I really feel like Kirk Cousins is kind of like a product of his environment. Meaning, when he was with the Washington football team, back then, they were, of course, with the Redskins. Um, I really feel like the Washington was just a bad organization all the way around when he was there. So I really feel like Kirk Cousins wasn't in a great position. And then with the Vikings, we've seen what Kirk Cousins can do. We've seen what he can do when he has the structure around him. And I feel like if he were to come to Atlanta, I really feel like the Falcons have a better O line than the Vikings. I feel like last year our defense was better than the Vikings, or right there up there with the Vikings. So I really feel like if you put him with the Falcons and give him a Bijan Robinson, give him a Tyler Algier, and these weapons that we have, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, I think that he's kind of like a force multiplier where you're going to see those other guys play better. Meaning you'll see Kyle Pitts' numbers jump up, because we've seen last year TJ Hawkinson with the Vikings. Before Kirk Cousins got hurt, TJ Hawkinson was putting up big numbers. And even after he got hurt, TJ Hawkinson played really well last year. But he's one of those guys, like I said, he's going to get the ball out of his hands on time. He's going to distribute the ball and be kind of like that point guard or that field general out there. He's going to understand where the mismatches are and give his guys opportunities to make plays. And I feel like that's kind of what the younger quarterbacks, especially the ones that we've had, the Desmond Ritters, the Taylor Heineke's, those guys are decent quarterbacks, but I really feel like their biggest issue is because we had big body guys like Drake London, like Kyle Pitts, they don't understand that when they're covered, they're open. If a corner is one-on-one with Drake London or one-on-one with Kyle Pitts, just put it in the area and give those guys an opportunity to make plays. If you go look at a lot of Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins highlights, most of the times, Justin Jefferson, there's been times where he's covered because teams know that he's the number one option. He's number one, 1A and 1B for the Vikings. And that's the reason why they went out and got a Jordan Addison. But before Jordan Addison was there, Kirk Cousins was still able to put up big numbers. And Ray Fitty says, Jude, Jared Verse or Dallas Turner. If it was up to me personally, I like Jared Verse over Dallas Turner because I think that Jared Verse is better in stopping the run. Dallas Turner is one of those guys that's really good as well. And I feel like this could be a 1A, 1B type scenario as well. But I think that to me, Jared Verse to me is the stronger player. And I think he's the more well-rounded player as far as him being a little bit more experienced, him having a little bit of a hotter motor or higher motor, where he's not one of those guys that gives up on plays and stuff like that. And I just think that Dallas Turner is just a little bit more raw. He's not as developed as a Jared Verse. Jared Verse is a name that a lot of people are kind of looking over because Dallas Turner played at Alabama. But I think right now, if you had made me choose, I think that Jared Verse is the better prospect coming out. Like from what I'm hearing from the writers and stuff like that with the Florida State and some of the, the draft experts and things of that nature, they state that they think that Jared Verse, and I've been hearing this from the Florida State camp, they're saying that Jared Verse will probably be the best, year one, like the best rookie pass rusher. And personally, just looking at what I've seen out of watching film, what I've seen out of watching highlights and things of that nature, and then watching some of the college football games from last year, I think that Jared Verse is going to be better in year one. Now, Dallas Turner could turn out to be the better prospect, but I think Jared Verse is the more ready prospect. So if the Falcons want to go out there and get like a guy that's going to come in and do his thing next season, I think Jared Verse would probably be the better pick. William Amy says, I'm tired. What's going on? I'm tired of bridge quarterback. Yeah, me too. I mean, I'm tired of the bridge quarterback too. I hope that the Falcons are able to get their guy. The only thing that we gotta be careful of is if you go and get your guy, you're gonna have to give up something. So I feel like if the Falcons trade and move up in the draft, which I want them to do. If you have a chance to get Jaden Daniels, I believe that guy's going to be special. And if you can trade up somehow, the Bears decide that they're not going to draft Caleb Williams, and then you have your pick of your pick of Jaden Daniels or Drake May or those top 3 guys, 3 or 4 guys, then I would take the risk. I would take the risk. I would trade up and go get Jaden Daniels. But it depends on what the team is asking for. If they're asking for Bijan Robinson, I'm not doing it. The only way I do it is if they just want picks. I'm not giving them players. I'm not giving up Kyle Pitts. I'm not giving up. Because to me, it doesn't make sense to trade up and get rid of one of your weapons to get a quarterback. That doesn't make sense. To me, what the Panthers did as far as trading DJ Moore to the Bears, moving up to the number 1 pick to get Bryce Young, to me was dumb because okay, now they had a good quarterback, but they didn't have a number 1 wide receiver for him to throw to. So it didn't make a whole lot of sense. I feel like they would have just been better off just giving up picks. So that's my whole thing, William Amy, when it comes to wanting to go get your guy. I think it's time for the Falcons to finally, if they think one of these guys can be a franchise guy, I feel like they need to stand 10 toes down and go ahead and get one of those guys. Because I would prefer a rookie quarterback too, just based off of the contract. I prefer not to pay a Kirk Cousins. As I mentioned before, I forgot what he wanted, but they said he wants like a fully guaranteed contract. Because he's coming off a Achilles tear, I would rather just have my pick of the litter of the quarterbacks that are in the draft, and now you got that 4 to 5 year window to try to develop him into being what you think he could possibly be, and then you still have Desmond Ritter that can continue to develop, in the background. And Beasley says JJ McCarthy is interesting. JJ McCarthy is interesting, but he's not a guy that I would risk drafting in the top 10. I think he's more of a second round guy. But you never know. The quarterback to me is the hardest position to diagnose because nobody's seen Brock Purdy coming. I don't care what the 49ers say. I don't care what none of these draft prospects, or draft analysts say. None of them saw Brock Purdy coming. So at the end of the day, JJ McCarthy is one of those guys that's interesting because he's a winner. He won a national championship. He went through the gauntlet. He played the Alabamas. He played Washington in the championship. He went through the gauntlet of the Big Ten playing Ohio State. So he's played the top competition on the college level and came out unscathed. So that means something to me that he had the fortitude to come out on the other side as a champion. And I believe the Michigan Wolverines were undefeated last year. And he played for Jim Harbaugh, who I'm very highly, I speak very highly of. I think Jim Harbaugh is one of the better quarterback developers. He's one of those guys that's a brilliant, offensive and football mind. So JJ McCarthy is definitely one of those guys that I definitely think is very, very interesting as a prospect. I'm just not too sure that because he doesn't have, those attributes of being 6'5". Nobody says that he has a great arm. To me, he's just one of those guys that just makes the right play. And sometimes that's all you need to win. Like I said, we've seen Brock Purdy. Is Brock Purdy a super athlete? No, he doesn't have a big arm. He's not super fast, and he's not super big. He's not 6'5". He's about 6'1". He's similar to Desmond Ritter. If you look at Desmond Ritter, and Brock Purdy and JJ McCarthy, to me, those guys, their body makeup, as far as being an athlete, to me, those guys are kind of right there together. I think Desmond Ritter may be a little bit faster than those guys, just straight line running and stuff like that. But McCarthy is interesting. I'm going to be very interested to see if somebody drafts him in the first round. But I wouldn't be surprised if like a Minnesota drafted him. If I'm the Falcons, I'm not drafting him at 8. If they really like him, I would just move back. I would move back because I don't think that. I think you can get more value if you're gonna take a McCarthy. I think you could trade back, still draft, or still get other draft picks where you can kind of build and then still take him as your guy. That's who you really, really like. But he's very interesting. I'll give you that. He's very interesting. I just don't know because to me, he doesn't do anything that jumps off the screen when I watch his film and when I watched his games, even in the championship game, because of the offense that he was in, where Harbaugh believes in running the football and the pass is secondary. The only thing that I will say about McCarthy that I thought was really positive is he looks like he understands how to throw the ball with anticipation. So because he doesn't have a great arm, I mean, I don't really think he has a really strong arm. He makes up for that with understanding how to get the ball out on time, throw the ball to a spot before and know where your receiver is going to be and get the ball out quick. So that's something that I do think is kind of like Drew Brees-esque. When Drew Brees was with the Saints and with the Chargers, he never had a strong arm, but he could anticipate. So that's what kind of made up for him not having the strongest arm. And let's see. Andrew G says, we need a vet, not a rookie. Well, I don't necessarily think that a vet means that you can't win now. Like everybody's saying that we want to win now. I want to win now too, but I don't think that going with a veteran over a rookie necessarily doesn't mean that you can't win if you draft a rookie. I mean, we've seen with CJ Stroud, which he didn't have a lot. That cover for the Houston Texans was kind of bare when he got drafted. Like they don't have a ton of weapons. Yeah, they drafted Tank Dell, but outside of Tank Dell and then the one guy that I can't think of his name right now, the secondary wide receiver that they had, number 12, I can't think of his name right now, but they didn't have really no great weapons. Like I feel like the Falcons' weapons are better than the Texans, and the Texans were in the AFC playoffs. So, and then we know the AFC right now is the superior division. So, I think even if you draft a guy like a Jaden Daniels or draft a young guy, you still can win games. It all comes down to execution. It comes down to coaching, not making dumb mistakes at critical moments. And, we know games in the NFL usually come down to the one possession. So if you don't make that back-breaking mistake, you could be if the Falcons, make two tackles for against or make two sacks against the quarterbacks, we're in the playoffs. If we win the two games, the Cardinals game and the Vikings game, 9 times out of 10, the Falcons would have made the playoffs. So, and William Amy says we're getting we're going to get a trading or we're getting a trading up in the draft to grab Daniels. I guess he's saying we're going to trade up. I don't know. I don't know that, but I hope that the Falcons are considering it. I mean, if you got a chance to get your guy, get your guy. As long as they don't, you don't trade everybody to do it. But I think at some point it's going to have to be some type of sacrifice made. Anthony White says Kirk Cousins is the guy for the Falcons. He would elevate this team to the playoffs. Yeah, I completely agree. And what's going on, Anthony? I appreciate you joining as always. Yeah, I think Kirk Cousins will be a good quarterback, and he is a good quarterback. Like I really feel like if he came to the Falcons, he would elevate these guys around him, and we would see the best out of these guys. And as I keep mentioning over and over again, there's always going to be quarterbacks coming out. The Shador Sanders, maybe next year, the year after that. You have guys that's going to be, if you want to take a young guy, it's always going to be talent, more and more talent coming out. So for those analysts that are saying this is the best, they say that every year, this is the best crop of quarterbacks or whatever. They say that every year. So I don't buy that when they say that this is going to be a great year, for quarterbacks and things of that nature, because we hear that every single season. So it really just comes down to us doing our due diligence, meaning the Falcons scouting staff and things of that nature. They have to do their due diligence. If they feel like one of these guys are it, then you make that jump. You don't wait. You go ahead and pull the trigger on it. But if you feel like you're reaching, and that's why I keep saying about JJ McCarthy, I'm not reaching and just taking a quarterback because we need one. If I'm gonna do that, then I'm just gonna go ahead and spend some of this money in free agency and just, bring in that bridge quarterback for the next couple seasons. Because another thing that we have to think about when it comes to winning a Super Bowl, if winning is the end all be all, which I feel like winning should always be the bottom line, I don't care if Kirk Cousins is only here a year. If he wins the Super Bowl in that 1 year he's here, that's all that matters. It's about getting to the promised land. So if you think one of these guys can get you there, look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They literally took a chance on Tom Brady, who was over 40 at the time. He signed like a 2 or 3 year deal, and they won a Super Bowl. So at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Yeah, he didn't have no, longevity with them because he was at the twilight of his career, the end of his career. But I don't believe that the Buccaneers feel like they made a mistake by paying Tom Brady or paying all of those guys that they paid. Because look at the Buccaneers last year. they still made the playoffs with Baker Mayfield. So them going out and going all in for Tom Brady and all of the guys they brought in, Gronk, AB, it was worth, all of the trouble. He was worth all of that trouble with them, you know, spending all of that money and stuff like that. It was worth it because at the end of the day, they won a Super Bowl. So it was a successful, a successful plan. So that's all I really care about. Yes, I want to be able to sustain winning, but if you bring in Kirk Cousins, if you bring in Russell Wilson, we don't know. Maybe Desmond Ritter develops into, something similar to what we're seeing right now with Jordan Love. Who's to say Desmond Ritter sits for a couple more years? You bring in an older veteran quarterback like a Russell Wilson or a Kirk Cousins that can kind of help groom Ritter until he's ready to take that next step. So that's another option. There's a lot of different avenues, and that's what makes this fun. That's what makes this interesting. Is it's not one way to success. So it ain't a draft a young guy and that's the way, or find a great quarterback. It's not draft sign a veteran guy or trade for a veteran guy. It's a lot of different ways that you can do this. So it's not just one way. So we got to be open minded when it comes to free agency. We got to be open minded when it comes to the draft because there's multiple ways to do it, and there's multiple ways to manipulate the cap. I keep hearing like we're not gonna have enough money. If you know how to manipulate the cap, look at a team like Philadelphia. They're forever, it seems like, signing a big name free agent, and that's because they know how to manipulate the cap, the salary cap. If you know what you're doing with the numbers, crunching the numbers, you should always be in good positions to win. You should always be in have your team in position to compete. Yeah. And Raymond Collins, he said, "What's happening, Jew? What's going on, man? I appreciate you joining as well. And you guys continue to drop your questions in here as well. Let's see. And there you go. Anthony, tell him, he said, hit that like, hit that subscribe button for your boy. I appreciate that, man. We appreciate you guys sharing out my content. And Blanco says, rumors are we're interested in Snead from the Chiefs. Is he expensive? Yes. Yes, Snead is very expensive. Snead actually is a really good player, but I think if you go after Snead, you're gonna probably lose AJ Terrell. So you gotta pick your poison. Like, do you think the Falcons are gonna have to decide, do they think he's a better corner than AJ Terrell? Personally, I don't really know. I think I like AJ Terrell personally, but Snead is a guy that played really well, but I don't know if he's just playing well because he's in that system, or is he really like that? Like, I've seen some of his highlights and I haven't really seen film on him like that, but I've seen clips and highlights and things of that nature of him. And then I've seen, of course, him playing the Super Bowl. I've seen him on his run with the Chiefs. But what scares me about a player like Snead is we've seen guys that have been really, really good with a certain team and a certain scheme. And Steve Spagnuolo, to me, doesn't get enough credit for, being a really good defensive mind. When you think about great defensive coordinators or great defensive coaches, Spag's name doesn't come up enough. He's a top 3 defensive mind in the NFL. But usually when you think about top defensive minds, the first names that come up is like Belichick, um, you know, and then the younger guys, these younger guys like Robert Saleh and all these different guys like that. But to me, Spags is right up there. He's like top 2, top 3 when it comes, from my money, because he was with the Giants and he beat the Patriots. I believe that was the 17-0 Patriots when Spags was their defensive coordinator with Strahan and OC Umenyiora and those guys. And then he's won 2 or 3 championships with the Chiefs. So yeah, he's one of those guys where Spags, I think, is a really good play caller. So I don't know if Snead is just like that, or if it's more he's like that in that particular scheme. Because like I said, we've seen the Nami Asamoahs go from the Raiders to the Eagles years ago. It didn't work out. We've seen guys, go from one team to the other, and sometimes it doesn't pan out. So sometimes I think you think the grass is green on the other side. And I know a lot of people are like upset because AJ Terrell doesn't, he hasn't been putting up the numbers as far as interceptions and stuff like that. And I'm kind of upset too. Like I understand that a lot of people don't want to pay AJ Terrell because he doesn't have the numbers when it comes to INTs and stuff like that. But I think this year is going to be kind of like a prove it year for AJ Terrell. And with Raheem Morris here, with Jimmy Lake here, and Jerry Gray, all of those guys are, especially Raheem Morris and Jerry Gray, those guys are secondary like specialists. That's what those guys do. So if they can get the best out of AJ Terrell this year, like if he comes back out this season and doesn't have any INTs, then I think AJ Terrell could be in trouble. But personally, I would stick with AJ over Snead. But Snead has been balling. Like I ain't gonna lie to you, he's a baller. But I just don't know if it's more about him or is it more about, okay, he plays with a Chris Jones, he's in a certain particular scheme that makes him look good, similar to Josh Norman that was with the Carolina Panthers. That was like he was a dog when he was with Carolina, but then after that he went and played in Washington, and then he was just all over the place. Like Josh Norman never was that same guy after he left Carolina. So that's what scares me about a guy like Snead. Not that I don't think that he's good. It's just like I don't know if he's outside of that scheme, if he's going to be the same player. Let's see here. And Johnson Brazil says, "What if we brought in Shaq Barrett from the Bucks? They are releasing him. I wouldn't mind bringing in Shaq Barrett, but if I bring in Shaq Barrett, we're gonna have to bring in a couple guys. So he's gonna be similar to like Bud Dupree, the guys that I named. He's more of a rotational pass rusher. So if you bring in a Shaq Barrett, I'm not giving him top dollar. I'm giving him like a 1 or 2 year deal, similar like a short prove it type deal, because he's another one that's kind of getting up there. I think he's knocking on 30 if he's not 30 already. But I think he definitely could be a guy in your rotation. If you want to bring him in and he'd be one of the rotational guys, if you decide not to bring back a Bud Dupree, then I definitely think that Shaq Barrett could be a guy, that the Falcons look at. But I did see that he's getting released. So, and that's because of his cap hit. His cap number is really high. So that's the Bucks had no choice. And there you go right here. Dre Murphy said it best. Blanco, Kansas City Chiefs ain't letting him leave out of KC, bro. Point blank, period. Yeah, I don't think that Snead is going anywhere unless they just don't have enough money to pay him. But I feel like they're gonna find a way to maneuver that cap to try to keep him, because he's their number one corner. Like I don't see them allowing him to walk. Now, Kansas City has done a good job though of drafting guys, because they got Trent McDuffie as well, who's a really good corner. But I think they're gonna try to find a way to pay Snead. And to be honest, I don't really think Snead wants to leave. I think he wants to kind of stay in KC, unless the money is just too much where he can't deny it. But I really feel like Chris Jones, Snead, a lot of those Kansas City players, because they're winning, who doesn't like to win? Like, yes, you want to make as much money as you can, but eventually I feel like somehow, some way, they're gonna try to find a way to pay Snead. And William Amy says Penix Jr. got an arm and reading defense. I think Penix is a decent quarterback. I talked about him last week on my live show. Penix is a guy that I think is a pretty good, processor of the defense. He's one of the better cerebral quarterbacks in this draft, as far as he gets the ball out of his hands quick. The only thing that scares me about Penix is the injuries. That's what scares me about Penix is his injuries, though, knee injuries, and I believe they say he had a shoulder injury. Those are the biggest concerns I have for Penix. But as far as just being able to get the ball out, I think he would be a good quarterback under this particular scheme, because it's predicated on a guy like a Matthew Stafford, somebody that can get the ball out quick. They had Jared Goff running this offense as well, and both of those guys, both Goff and Stafford, those guys are from the neck up. They understand the game. They understand get the ball out. They understand ball placement. They understand the velocity that you have to throw the ball with. And I think that that's something that Penix does really well. I really think that Penix is one of those guys in this draft that's like a pure pocket passer. Like he's a guy, if you give him time, he gonna carve your defense up. And we've seen that this year with him playing at Washington. That's why he put up the numbers he put up, because he had good wide receivers, a good O line, and he was able to, take his time. And when you give him time, he's a really accurate quarterback. Now sometimes he does struggle with like his footwork and stuff like that. Like I do think he needs to clean up his footwork, and his release is a little bit funky the way he throws the ball, because he throws left-handed, and sometimes it doesn't look the best coming out his hand, but he has a quick, really, really quick release. So I really think that that's the benefits. The only thing that scares me with Penix is the injuries, and then to me, he's not a great athlete. Like he's not a guy that's the fastest guy, and he really is not a guy that's going to create outside of the pocket. He's a guy that wants to sit in the pocket and make plays. Let's see. Andrew G says Juice, CJ Stroud, and Brock Purdy are rare specimens. I like vets over rookies because one thing I hear on Mad Mike's channel is experience beats talent. Oh yeah, I mean I definitely agree. At times, experience does beat talent at times, but I just feel like where the Falcons are, they really can't go wrong, whether they go veteran or whether they go young. Personally, if I were the GM, I would go young, because I feel like at this point, you're best off going to get you a quarterback, um, going to get your guy, unless you're just not sold on any of these guys. If you're not sold on them, then I'm not just drafting a quarterback in the first round just because we need a quarterback. At that point, you go with a veteran guy. But if you think one of these guys are going to be really good, and I really feel like the guy to me in this draft that I think is really going to be really, really good is Jaden Daniels. Like that's a guy, if I had to put my money, like put my house on it, I would say Jaden Daniels is going to be a guy that's going to be really, really good. And I'm just going off the eye test. I'm just going off of what I've seen him do in college, both when he was at Arizona State and when he was at LSU. And then just looking at the athlete he is, to me, he's just the overall. He can throw the ball from the pocket. He can run. He can pretty much do it all. And that's to me what makes him the best prospect out of all of the guys, even the Caleb Williams. To me, everybody says Caleb Williams is the best prospect, but to me, I think it's Jaden Daniels. I think Caleb Williams is the most intriguing because he's a guy similar to Pat Mahomes, where he's throwing the ball from all these crazy angles and stuff like that. But I think too much of his game is based upon that, him throwing, running the other way, throwing across the field and stuff like that, and him using his arm strength. But I don't think that makes him the best. And the best way I can compare it is Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes can make all of the crazy throws and stuff like that. But personally, I think that Josh Allen is a better athlete. Like if you talk about stronger athlete, faster athlete, can throw the ball farther, I think Josh Allen may be the better athlete out of him and Pat Mahomes. But I think that Pat Mahomes makes more sound decisions with the football when it comes to a Josh Allen. So I think that that's where the difference, comes in. And I think the same thing about Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams is a guy who's going to take a lot of risk. And I think that Jaden Daniels is going to understand the game a little bit more. So he's going to make more sound decisions. And then I think that Jalen Daniels is a better runner with the football. Like if you want somebody to be explosive and make plays, that's going to be Jaden Daniels. He's an explosive athlete, both running and throwing. While I think Caleb Williams is mainly just with his arm. I don't really look at Caleb Williams as a great athlete. I don't really think he's a really fast athlete just on using his legs. He can run, but I don't think that that's what that he's a great runner. I've seen Jaden Daniel highlights where this dude's running away from corners and stuff like that and running for 60, 70-yard touchdowns. That's not something you see that's not something you see every day. Let's see. And Raymond Collins says, I'm not feeling McCarthy. Don't know how Robinson's going to approach this offensive plan, but I'm feeling Drake May watching McMay offense. I guess he's talking about Sean McVay. Yeah, I like Drake May. Drake May is another one I like, actually. He's one of them guys where I think that he's not a great athlete, meaning he's not super fast, but he's a big guy. He's 6'5, 220 pounds. And I think that he comes from good bloodlines. Like his father was a quarterback, played at North Carolina. His older brother played at North Carolina, played a little bit in the NBA, but I think that Drake May is another guy that could be really good. Now, I think that he's another guy that's still kind of raw, and that's the thing that kind of scares me with Drake May is he still has a lot of development, but I think that he has a big arm, and he's another one where I compare him kind of to like a Josh Allen as far as he has a very strong arm because he's a big guy, so he's going to be a hard quarterback to sack because he's really big, similar to like a Ben Roethlisberger, a Josh Allen, because he's 6'5", 220 pounds. He's not going to be taken down with an arm tackle. That dude is a now he's not. I don't think the athlete that Josh Allen is as far as straight line speed. Now we're gonna see in the combine, what he runs and stuff like that. Because I didn't think that Josh Allen was the athlete he was either coming out, and he was a lot better than a lot of people thought. And let's see. Dre says, I hope and pray and wish DR9 can develop into something like Jordan Love did sitting behind Aaron Rodgers because he got the potential. He just needs more development. Yeah, I agree. I mean, Desmond Ritter is one of those guys that you guys know I was banging the table all season about Arthur Smith, Dave Ragone, those guys not putting him in the right positions to succeed. Those guys putting him in bad situations and then also benching him. I don't think that benching him did anything but took away some of his confidence. Yes, I do think that Desmond Ritter is an underdog and he didn't give up, but most quarterbacks and most players just need a coach that believes in them 100%. And I don't think that Arthur Smith really believed in him 100%. Because if he believed in him, he wouldn't have benched him going into that Cardinals or Minnesota game, whichever game it was. Because at the time when he got benched, I think we were still like in first place in our division, and we were like 500 or one game above 500. So I feel like he just jumped ship too quick, and that pretty much threw a whole monkey wrench in the whole season. I really feel like the first benching of Desmond Ritter is what kind of destroyed that Atlanta Falcons season. That was a turning point in the season when we benched Desmond Ritter. But I definitely think he has the opportunity. Like I said, if you're gonna go out there and draft a McCarthy, you might as well stick with Desmond Ritter if that's what you're doing. Because I don't really feel like that's not really to me, as far as looking at those guys and comparing those guys' film and things of that nature and what those guys can do as a quarterback, I really don't think that you're really doing much. If you go, it's like to me like a lateral move. If you go from Ritter to McCarthy, you really ain't did anything. You might as well just stay with Ritter and use that number one pick on an edge or an offensive lineman or something that you really need. Now, if you're going to get one of these top guys, like I mentioned, and these guys that are more athletic, these guys that are, a little bit more proven. Okay, but I can't really, I can't really justify. I said this last week. I can't justify the McCarthy pick unless you trade back. But if you trading at 8, I can't justify it. Let's see. And Antoine Wartime TV says that's the reason why I like listening to you. You are the best one out of the heavy hitters. You know how to talk to the fans in respectful way about the team that we like. You do a good job by yourself. Oh no, man, it's as I really appreciate the love, Antoine. But we all are a team. Like I said, I love the heavy hitters. Those are my brothers, Mike, K Styles, and even all of the AFN crew. I got love for those guys, but we all approach it in a different way. That's just my approach. That's how I approach it. That's why they call me the calm before the storm, because I'm one of those guys that I'm approach it. That's the way that I approach things. Well, y'all should know better. His name is Mad Mike. Mad Mike Sports. His name Mad Mike for a reason. So everybody has their own approach, but that's my approach that I take to it. But I appreciate the love, man. Tony Hall, hey Jew, do you think that the Falcons' long-term successor for Jake Matthews and Grady Jarrett are already on the roster? This is a good question. Or do we need to draft or sign via free agency? I actually was sitting back thinking about this earlier today, and I really feel like the Falcons are going to have to start looking for someone to replace Jake Matthews. Now, they may be already on the team because I know that Matthew Bergeron, I think in college was a tackle. I don't know if he was a left tackle, but I think he's a guy you can kick out to tackle. But then again, Jake Matthews' dad, I think, played in the league to his close to his 40s. I think he was close to 40. I think Bruce Matthews, which is his father that played for the Houston Oilers, he was in the league for like almost 20 years and played at an elite level. So I think that that's a great question, but I really feel like you always have to, be developing guys. And this is why I always say that development is paramount in the NFL. Is you always have to be developing, your own guys behind the next, because you never know when somebody's gonna just have a freak injury and be done for the rest of their career, or you never know when someone's just gonna wake up and say, I don't want to do this no more. I want to retire. So I don't know how long Jake Matthews wants to play, whether he wants to be that long, have that longevity like his father, or if he's gonna want to at some point retire in the next couple years. So we have to keep that in the back of our minds as well. And that's why I mentioned previously about maybe we draft an offensive lineman as well. That's not something that's out of the realm of possibility. Like if the Falcons decide, okay, we're not going to get a quarterback, we're not going to take an edge because we think one of these offensive tackles is like going to be that dude. They might do that. You never know. So at this point, I wouldn't do that because I think that'll be out the blue for them to do it unless they know something in the background, like Jake Matthews has told them, I got 2 more years and then I'm done. Then at that point, you gotta, definitely look at how we're going to replace Jake Matthews. Because I really feel like Jake Matthews is one of those guys that's been overlooked. He doesn't get the credit that he deserves. He's similar to a Matt Ryan when Matt Ryan was with our Falcons. His durability. Jake Matthews is one of those guys, knock on wood here, that doesn't get injured for the most part. He's been one of those guys that's been one of the most consistent left tackles in the NFL. He doesn't get the accolades. He doesn't have all of the accolades that he deserves because I think he's only made one Pro Bowl, which I think was 2016 when we went to the Super Bowl. But because he plays for the Falcons and we're just not one of those teams that are like get the credit that we deserve as an organization, he's arguably been a top 10 left tackle his whole career, and he doesn't get the credit he deserves. At the peak of his powers, he probably was a top 5 left tackle. But if you think about it, Jake Matthews has been one of those guys, has been one of the most consistent players in the NFL throughout his career. As far as Grady Jarrett, I feel like we've done a good job of continuing to draft defensive linemen. I mean, you have Taquan Graham, who came back from injury last year, that looked good in his rookie season. Last year, he didn't play a whole lot, and he still was not 100% because he was coming back from the knee injury. But he's a guy that's similar to a Grady Jarrett. If you go look at his rookie season, he played really well. You brought in David Onyemata, who is another guy that's really good in the interior. And then Contavious Street also played well last year. So I think we also have to draft at that position as well. But finding the next Grady Jarrett is going to be hard to do, both him and Jake Matthews, because those guys are like two cornerstone type players. So I don't think you're going to necessarily just be able to just replace them like that. That's like a Jesse Tuggle, a Michael Vick. When those guys were here, it's hard to just replace a guy like that. Even like a Julio Jones, we still really haven't found the next great. Even though I like Drake London, he's not on Julio Jones level yet. So finding those guys that are like Pantheon great players, which I consider Jake Matthews one of the Pantheon greats for the Falcons. I consider Grady Jarrett up there in the Pantheon of great Atlanta Falcon players. It's going to be hard to like replace those guys. But I definitely think you got to continue to draft. And that's why I keep saying development, development, development. You have to continue to develop young talent. That's the only way that you get better is continuing to develop talent. Let's see. And let's see. And I appreciate you guys. And I'm going to be jumping off in a minute, closing out the show in a minute. But I want to see if I didn't get to some of you guys' questions. And another PR says bring Cousins for 2 years and draft Hines King from GT and let him and Ritter fight it out. Yeah, I haven't seen Heinz King, but I'm gonna have to check him out. I'm assuming GT means Georgia Tech, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I mean, Kirk Cousins, like I said, he definitely would be. He's not gonna be your average bridge quarterback. Like he's gonna be a lot better than like a Marcus Mariota. He's gonna be better probably than a Desmond Ritter first year because he just has the experience. It's like bringing Matt Ryan back to the Falcons at this point. Kirk Cousins is one of those guys that has thrown for 4,000 yards consistently, been a guy that's been consistent as far as he's a mid-level quarterback. So if you're doing the top 25 quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins is going to fall between 10 and 15. He's anywhere between 10 and 15. So you can win with a quarterback in that range if you got a team that's built around him the right way. So Kirk Cousins is to me a guy that can win a Super Bowl if he's in the right situation. He has the arm talent and he can do, really good things. Let's see. And I seen that Georgia boy said it just announced May will not throw at the combine. Yeah, they talked about this a little bit last night. Both Mike and K Styles, they all kind of talked about this last night. And I mentioned the combine, or a lot of quarterbacks don't like to throw there, and they talked about that last night because it's not a controlled environment. So they're like, I'm not gonna go out there with, and this is something that Mike said last night and Kay said last night. I'm not gonna go out there with receivers that I've never thrown to, and make myself look bad. I want to look the best as possible. So if you're a guy like Drake May and you want to possibly move up draft boards, the way you do that is have your pro day at North Carolina where you're throwing the guys you've been throwing to all season, and it's basically a controlled environment. So they're going to run the routes that he throws best. They're going to throw everything in their power for him to go out there and none of the footballs hit the ground. They want to go out there and have a clean showing. So they're gonna be out there running all of the routes that he likes to throw and the ones that he throw best. That's what these guys do at their pro day. They want to show off their talents. They don't want to go out there and risk, you know, looking bad or looking worse. And I appreciate the super chat from Maurice Martin. I appreciate that $2 super chat. He says, "Do you think Ritter can be a starter with time?" Yeah, I definitely think he can. Like Desmond Ritter is one of those guys that I definitely think can be a starting quarterback in the NFL, could possibly be a franchise guy. But we have to be willing to be patient. That's the issue. A lot of the fans, a lot of the media, because Desmond Ritter is not flashy and he's not what they believe is a top quarterback or a franchise quarterback because he doesn't look like a franchise quarterback to them. He's not a physically imposing dude. Like he's not a Cam Newton 6'5". He's not one of these Drake Mays 6'5", 220. He's more of a 6'3", 200 pounds. They don't really, or 215. They really don't like that. But if you look at um, Jordan Love, I think that that's a great comparison. To me, Jordan Love and Desmond Ritter are very similar. The only difference I think between those guys is maybe their throwing motion. Because I think that um, Love may have a stronger arm. Like Love, when he was throwing the ball, he looked a lot like Aaron Rodgers with his throwing release. And I think he may have like a quicker release than Desmond Ritter. But Desmond Ritter did some good things last year. Like people forget Desmond Ritter beat Jordan Love in week 2 last year. So for the ones that are saying that he's not on the level of some of these guys that we put on this pedestal, I really think that Desmond Ritter is a guy that's right there or could be up there with a guy like a Jordan Love. And as far as if you wanted me to compare Desmond Ritter to a quarterback in the league today, it would be Jordan Love as far as body style, as far as both of those guys can scramble a little bit. They're not the fastest guys, but they can scramble a little bit and they're around the same height, same weight. So those guys, that would be like a perfect comparison. The main difference between Jordan Love and Desmond Ritter is coaching mainly. If you look at Matt LaFleur, and then you look at Arthur Smith and his play calling and his system, the Green Bay put him in better positions to succeed. And we got to remember that Jordan Love was sitting on the bench behind Aaron Rodgers for what, 2 or 3 years? I think it was 3 years, almost 4 years. So when you've been sitting on the bench behind a legend, and he had, Green Bay is just one of the better organizations, period, as far as developing their own talent. We know for years that Green Bay, they hardly like paying guys from outside as far as in free agency. They're one of them teams where most of their guys that turn out to be stars are guys that they drafted. If you think about Devontae Adams, if you think about Greg Jennings when he was on their team, if you think about Jordy Nelson, most of all of the guys that are Green Bay like Pro Bowl players or guys that turn out to be stars, they rarely go out and sign free agents that become really really good players. Most of their guys are homegrown, developed. It's only like one or two guys that I can think off the top of my head that's like, okay, Charles Woodson, when they won the Super Bowl, they went out and paid him. But outside of that, they paid Devondre Campbell from the Falcons. But most of the other guys that they have are guys that they drafted. Clay Matthews, any of these guys you can think of that are currently on their team now, most of those guys they actually drafted. Jair Alexander. These are guys that the Packers drafted. So they do a good job of drafting and developing guys. And let's see, I'm gonna answer about two more questions and then we're gonna get up out of here. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys for joining me. Let's see. So Dre says Drake London might not be on Julio level yet, but he is getting there though. I'll give him a few more years. I think he will get there. Yeah, Drake London is my favorite player on the Falcons right now. Yeah, outside of like especially out of our wide receivers, but Drake London is my favorite Falcons player. He's one of those guys that I think is super competitive. You can tell that the game means a lot to him. The game against think it was against the Buccaneers, the second game against the Buccaneers, where we came up just short. They tried to throw the ball to him, but he made some spectacular catches in that game. But the last play of the game, he catches the ball like on the 3 yard line because he just couldn't get enough depth and gets tackled at the 3 yard line. And he literally just sits there on the field while everybody else shaking hands, sits in that same spot on the ground after getting tackled for like 5 minutes. Like that shows, man, that dude is just the ultimate competitor. He hates to lose. So that's one thing that I love about Drake London is he's one of those guys that's a special talent, but you could tell that the game means a lot to him. Like you could tell that he has that love for the game. It's just not about the money and the fame and stuff like that. I like seeing guys that love the game. You can tell that Drake London is one of those guys that works at his craft. You can tell that he's one of those guys that really, really enjoys, the game of football. I appreciate John Sinclair. What's going on, man? Good morning. Now, good afternoon. I appreciate you joining me, man. As always, I appreciate it. I'll answer one more question here. Let's see if I missed anybody's question. This is a good question here. So Georgia Boy says, so does Desmond Ritter sit for the next 2 years or sit 1 year under Russ or Kirk and then take the job? I just think that I think it depends, man. It just depends. It depends on the contract that you give Kirk Cousins or Russ. Personally, I think that if you bring in a vet, they're gonna probably want a 2 year deal. So I think if it's Russ or Kirk, what I would try to do is give them a 2 year deal with a player option, if that's a possible. Meaning the second year can be a year that can be voided out. So that's what I would do if you're gonna try to develop Desmond Ritter. Because one thing that I think that a lot of people are overlooking um with the Jordan Love situation, in that situation, a lot of people looked at that as a bad thing that the Packers never played him until his rookie deal was pretty much over, which I think it was a waste of a pick personally at the time that they did it, but it ended up working out. So I really feel like they took a risk. They took a chance, and Aaron Rodgers kind of held them hostage because they really wanted to move on from Aaron Rodgers a little bit earlier than they did. And personally, if I were the Green Bay Packers, I would have moved on from Aaron Rodgers earlier than they did. But how can you move on from a guy that's a future Hall of Famer, a guy that has won a Super Bowl for your franchise, or But personally, I think that they should have moved on a little bit earlier from Aaron Rodgers. I think that would have put them in a better position as far as they wouldn't have lost Devontae Adams possibly because they would have been able to pay him instead of paying Aaron Rodgers 40 or $50 million a year. So I really feel like they kind of messed up in a way, and they kind of just lucked into Jordan Love being a great quarterback. So I'm a firm believer in, for a quarterback to develop, they need to play. Like, yes, Jordan Love did learn from Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think he needed to sit 3 full years for him to grasp the game. I think he was ready to play probably at year 2. And what's up, man? My brother-in-law in the super chat with the super chat 9.99 says, Jew, what up, bro? Y'all have Kirk and that hefty price tag he will come with. We might be moving up to get Jaden Daniels. Would you like Daniels in your team if you could draft him? Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, most definitely. I just talked about that just a minute ago. Yeah, I definitely would. I like Kirk a lot, and my brother-in-law, by the way, is a Minnesota Vikings fan, so he would know best. Personally, I actually like Kirk Cousins a lot for the Falcons. But I want to trade up for Daniels. Yeah, I like Jaden Daniels. To me, he's the top quarterback on my draft board right now, even over Caleb Williams. I like Caleb Williams, but I think that Jaden Daniels is going to turn out to be the better pro. That's just me personally, because I think that everybody is falling in love with Caleb Williams' arm talent. Like, yes, he has a strong arm, but is he going to make good decisions with the football? That's what scares me about Caleb Williams. It's like, yes, he can make all of the throws, but Jay Cutler had a strong arm. Not saying that that's what he's going to be, but it's been a lot of guys that had strong arms, but they didn't make sound decisions with the football. And that's something that makes me a little bit nervous about Caleb Williams. Is he has a big arm and everybody's falling in love with. He can make the big throw, and he makes a lot of off script plays, similar to like when Russell Wilson was at his peak. I can scramble around and I can throw the ball across the field because my arm is, I'm like that. But I feel like Jaden Daniels, I think, will have more success because he can do both. I feel like he can play in multiple styles of offense because Jaden Daniels is a guy who would have fit in the Arthur Smith scheme where he can do the quarterback keepers, but he's also a guy I feel like can fit in a pass heavy scheme where I'm just going to sit here in the pocket and I'm going to make all of the throws down the field. So I feel like with Jaden Daniels, you get the best of both worlds, where in Caleb Williams, he's not going to be able to really play in a run heavy offense. Like if you ask Caleb Williams to be a RPO type quarterback where he has to do quarterback keepers, I haven't seen enough of his scrambling ability to think that he will be able to hurt teams with his legs consistently and make big plays with his legs. He's more of a guy that he just has a big arm and he can make all of the throws. But Jaden Daniels can pretty much do everything that Caleb Williams can do. He can make all of the throws, but he's more explosive to me as an athlete with his legs. So that's why I think Jalen Daniels gets the nod as 1A over Caleb Williams 1B. Personally, I would go with Jaden Daniels, but I hope the Vikings don't trade up. Darius, I hope they don't trade up and y'all go ahead and try to get Jaden Daniels. Hopefully the Falcons somehow, some way can maneuver up the draft board and we can get Jaden Daniels. But if we don't get Jaden Daniels, Kirk Cousins is not a bad consolation prize. Like I would take Kirk Cousins as well because the Falcons have shown the last couple of years 7-10, 7-10, 7-10. We've been in pretty much every football game, especially last year. We was in every single game outside of the last game against the Saints. Pretty much every game last year was a winnable game for the Falcons. A lot of our issues were self-inflicted wounds, meaning we shot ourselves in the foot. We on the goal line, we fumble. We on the goal line, we throw an interception. We just do foolish things. We on fourth and forever, we can't sack Kyler Murray. So those are the type of plays that really lost us games last year, and I think that that'll be the difference if you bring in a Kirk Cousins. But I appreciate the super chat, bro. I appreciate each and every one of y'all joining me for What's the Word, Dirty Bird. As I mentioned, we do this every Tuesday at 11 a.m. I try to keep it strictly to an hour, but I appreciate you guys, man, continuing to show love. Um, and not just hit that like and subscribe button here on my channel, but go over to the Heavy Hitters Live channel, hit that like and subscribe button on our channel as well. We currently are on the road to 1,000. I believe right now we're like at 600 and some, so we're almost at 700. But get us to 1,000 over there on the Heavy Hitters Live channel as well, and go hit that like and subscribe button at all of the channels over on AFN and all of the Atlanta Falcons YouTubers, man. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys. I have a lot more content coming for you guys. Stay tuned because I will be dropping a prospect video on Roman Wilson, the wide receiver out of Michigan. And then I have a lot more, of course, draft prospect videos, and of course, NFL news and stuff like that as well. But the combine is coming up, I believe, this week and next week. So we'll have a lot to talk about next week about the combine and some things that we've seen. And then we also have free agency coming up a week or two after that. So I'm definitely going to have a lot more content. So definitely stay tuned to the channel, and expect us to do a video. I believe tomorrow we should be going live as well. If I'm not mistaken, Matt Mike will be live tomorrow as well. So with that being said, this be your boy Jew. I have a lot more content coming for you guys. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up, be blessed. Peace.